You have been recycling your whole life. The plastic bottle, the takeaway container, the coffee cup. You rinsed it, you sorted it, you put it in the right bin, and you felt good about it. Hold on to that feeling, because this video is not about trash. It is about how that feeling was engineered and why it has stayed so stable for decades. In 2021, Americans generated 51 million tons of plastic waste. Independent engineering analysis puts the actual recycling rate at 5 to 6%. Not 50, not 30, 5. And that number has been falling steadily since 2014. So if the system is collapsing, why does it still feel like it is working? To answer that, you have to follow the signal. The one you have seen thousands of times. 3 chasing arrows printed on the bottom of almost every plastic product you own. You were taught it means recyclable. It does not. In 1970, a design student named Gary Anderson created those arrows for a contest by the Container Corporation of America. They entered the public domain, open to anyone. In 1988, the Society of the Plastics Industry took them. They placed a number inside the loops, 1 through 7. They called it the Resin Identification Code. It was never a consumer label. It was a sorting tag for facility workers. But visually, it looked exactly like a promise. And that visual gap is where the system begins. The former president of the Plastics Trade Group once put it plainly. If the public thinks recycling is working, they are not going to be as concerned about the environment. That statement is documented. Draw your own conclusions. But a symbol alone cannot sustain belief for 50 years. You need reinforcement. In 1973, an internal industry report sent to top executives called Large-Scale Plastic Sorting infeasible. It stated clearly, there is no recovery from obsolete products. A year later, courtroom discovery documents captured an industry speech admitting serious doubt that plastic recycling could ever be economically viable. The industry documented those limits internally, then spent tens of millions publicly promoting the opposite. Mobile's Massachusetts facility lasted 3 years. Amoco's New York school program lasted 2. Dow and Huntsman's National Parks Initiative reached 7 out of 419 parks before funding vanished. The press releases stayed. The programs did not. So why does the market keep failing plastic? Because the economics are fundamentally backwards. Aluminium retains full value. Glass often does. Plastic does not. There are thousands of chemical formulations. They degrade every time they are melted down. And virgin plastic, pulled directly from oil and gas, is cheaper to produce than recycled resin. When the raw material costs less than the recovered material, market forces do not just ignore recycling. They actively work against it. This is not a failure of consumer effort. It is a failure of material design. But if the math does not work, why do you still sort the bottle? Here is the psychological mechanism. It is called moral licensing. When you perform a virtuous act, your brain registers a psychological completion. You feel you have done your part. The bin becomes an end point. Not because the facility processes the plastic, but because the ritual discharges your guilt. And as long as that feeling persists, the public pressure for systemic reform quietly fades. So let us trace the full loop. Plastic is produced from fossil fuels. It is used once, then discarded. You see the arrows. You sort it into the bin. At the facility, most of it cannot be processed economically. It goes to landfill or export. And still, you feel like the job is done. The cycle is not broken. It is designed to feel complete. In 2022, the California Attorney General opened a formal investigation into whether the fossil fuel industry ran a coordinated campaign to overstate plastic recycling viability. Independent researchers published newly surfaced internal documents verifying the same paper trail. These findings are not isolated. They represent a converging record that has been building for half a century. We are not assigning blame, we are tracing structure. And what does the evidence actually support? Plastic recycling has not worked at the scale you were told. The symbol was not designed for you. The economics have not changed. The psychological loop remains intact. Aluminium works, glass works, paper works. For plastic, researchers agree. Reduction at the source is the only proven intervention, not sorting at the end. The bin is not useless, but the story built around it is incomplete. A symbol became a signal became belief, and that belief became the reason the system was never questioned at scale. If this is the kind of system you want to understand, subscribe.